Welcome to the Jeff Knows Inc. Entrepreneurial Podcast with your host, Jeff Lopes. Jeff has over 2 decades experience as a serial entrepreneur, building brands like Kimura from his home basement to a multi-million-dollar global brand that has sold over 250,000 pairs of boxing gloves. Jeff's here to educate, guide, and drive you on the process of bringing your ideas and dreams to reality with the inspiring stories from some of the top business minds.
Welcome to episode number 133 of the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. Super excited to have on today Dan Hollaway. Dan is the co-host of Drinkin Bros podcast, an American party podcast. Incredible interview. Such a great conversation. Tons and tons of value out of this podcast. Sit back, everyone, and enjoy. We are live on the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. Super excited to have on today Dan Hollaway. What is up, brother?
Just living the dream, enjoying the nice Austin weather today. It's probably humid outside, actually. I don't know. I haven't been out there yet, but we'll see. It looks nice from my window, so I'm feeling pretty good about
it. Dan is the host of a few shows, but I want to start off with kind of getting to know Dan from a more of an intimate level. Like, where'd you grow up? How many siblings you have? How was your childhood? Sports? Anything you did, and then start bringing up and how it led you into the military. Let's start with that. Growing up.
Sure. Yeah. I grew up in South Carolina near Clemson University, actually. I would say my childhood was not great. My dad was kind of a piece of shit, but he was, despite the tension in our relationship over the years, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's just a culture thing or conditioning or whatever it is, but a lot of the things that he enjoyed, I came to enjoy as well. A big baseball fan, I've been a Braves fan my entire life.
So you had some bad moments when the Jays played you guys in the 90s.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people did, right? Especially Mitch Williams. But yeah, it was. I've always enjoyed baseball quite a bit, and he was an airborne infantryman in the 101st Airborne. My grandfather was an airborne infantryman in the 11th Airborne. They jumped into Luzon, Philippines during World War II. So I guess it was just something that was in my blood, because that's what I went on to do after high school. I played baseball in high school and it was pretty good. But
what positions did you play?
I pitched and played center field mostly. I just had the center field thing. I wasn't really that fast. I just had good instincts. Like I could tell based on where the pitch location was, where the ball was probably going to get hit, and I would be running before the guy made contact sometimes. So I was able to, it was like a Jim Edmonds type of situation, I guess. I was able to make up for my whiteness, I guess. I mean, I'm really slow. But anyways, yeah, I enjoyed playing baseball quite a bit. The military thing, I knew I always wanted to do it. I for sure always wanted to do it, but I wanted to be prepared before I went in. I didn't actually join until I was 24 because I went to college twice first.
What'd you take in college?
Well, the first one is comparative religion, which I thought, I mean, I didn't really care too much, and I still don't care about religion, but I do feel like it's a good way to understand how human beings think and to understand the history of the world.
That's interesting. Yeah.
So I did that for a while, and then I got a degree in computer networking and security, and still enlisted. I didn't become an officer because I wanted to fight, So 24, I joined the Army, tool around a little bit. I was in the 82nd Airborne as an infantryman. In late 2006, we got deployed. We got called up on Division Ready Force and deployed in like 72 hours in support of the surge in Iraq. It was myself, a lot of guys, the 2325 Airborne Infantry Regiment. Jared Taylor was our JTAC. That's how I originally met him, actually. Jared, for your audience, is one of the owners of Black Rifle Coffee. And we've been friends for 15 years now because of that deployment. Yeah, but we deployed, came back, tooled around a little bit. Our next deployment was going to be to train local national forces in Afghanistan. And I was like, fuck that. I am not at all in any way interested in doing any of that shit. So I got out, worked in private security for a while, didn't intel for the federal government until finally Black Rifle called me up and it was like, hey, you should just come work for us. I'm like, I don't even know what you guys do. What the hell are you talking about? And he was like, well, you're doing intelligence. That's basically what marketing is. I was like, all right, cool. I'll look into that. So I looked into it, and he was right. The he being Evan Hafer, the CEO. And I had a good time doing that. Yeah, it was good. And we grew the company rapidly.
The company's exploded over the years. It grew very rapidly.
Well, it grew so fast that at some point I was like, yeah, I don't think I should be doing this. We should probably get somebody that knows what the fuck they're doing. Like I could figure it out, but you could figure it out when the company's making $10-50 million, but when it's making like $150 to $300 million, like, all right, cool. We got to get some professionals in here and figure out what the hell's going on so this thing can blow up even faster.
It's insane how quickly that company grew up. And just by those numbers you're throwing around, I mean, that's, as an entrepreneur, those are hefty numbers.
Yeah. I mean, it's essentially doubled in revenue every year since since 2016, I think at a minimum, it's doubled in revenue. So yeah, it's been a good couple of years for them. And then for us, once I realized we had the Drinkin Bros pretty much as a marketing apparatus of Black Rifle, but it had never been monetized or anything. So I'm like, well, I'll just take what I know about this and we'll turn this into a company. Right. And, you know, there's whenever you get that large, their brand safety issues come into play. People will bitch and complain about, oh, you're fucking selling out. Like, no, I'm just trying to fucking get rich. You know what I mean? Like, what's the point of all this? We give millions and millions of dollars to veteran and Second Amendment charities and stuff like that. We are not able to do that unless we're actually making the money. You know what I mean?
So 100%. And I never understood that. Right. I mean, any type of charity, I mean, there's administrative cost. There's so much cost to run with it, and especially when you're running a business and you're still giving so much. I would hear a lot of that stuff too, just from the outsider entrepreneur watching in, and I would hear that. And I would always question, especially other vets that were complaining and bitching about it. I couldn't understand it if they were giving back towards it, right? So it's crazy.
I don't get it either. Yeah, that's a very bizarre position to take. I mean, look, it's just haterade. That's all it really is. People that are and it's usually not people who have tried and failed. The people who have tried and failed just keep trying for the most part, in my experience. The people who are too fucking scared to actually do anything are the ones that spend all their time on Reddit talking shit.
Yeah, it's fear. It's fear edge, right? Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
It's fear run because they don't have the balls to do it themselves. So they think by bringing down other people, it's just going to just make them feel better, right? That's just I mean, you can call that in every society, right?
But that doesn't make any sense. And the truly ironic part about it. The truly ironic part about it, especially when it comes to me personally and Evan Hafer, the CEO of Black Rifle personally, is we've helped so many other people start companies, sometimes even companies that are in competition with us. You know what I mean? Just because like this isn't, we're not in a zero sum game here. Everybody can profit from this in one way or another, whether it be from starting their own business, or being part of one of ours, or learning from ours and then starting their own, or whatever, or even us helping them set it up. There's all kinds of different ways to do that. And then the community at large benefits because, I mean,
jobs are all given. There's so much opportunity, right?
Yeah, there's over 500 people working for Black Rifle now,
which is crazy. Like from the outside world looking in, I would never, and I know the company has grown and I've seen the growth. I would never ever imagine having 500 employees or having what you're saying number wise. It doesn't look like that from the outside because it still looks like a mama papa run organization. It looks like it's very homegrown still. So I love that. I love that they kept authenticity all the way through, which is very hard to do when you grow to that size, right?
Yeah, it's tough. Look, and some people, like recently, there's a New York Times article last week that a lot of people are bitching about, and some people are starting to look down the employee roster of Black Rifle and be like, "Hey, you guys have Democrats working for you." Like, by the way, just for context, I don't work for Black Rifle anymore. I don't even. They're just friends of mine. But I talk to them every single day, and that purity test nonsense. I don't give two fucks. Somebody is a Republican or a Democrat, right? You're either a good person striving towards making the country better, or you're not. Frankly, and I certainly there's no chance in hell that either one of these parties has, figured it all out. Right? That's just not how life works. So I don't know what people expect. I mean, first of all, it's illegal to hire and fire based on somebody's party affiliation. That's stupid.
Yeah.
Like you can't even do that. But why the hell would you? And what kind of intellectual coward only wants to be around people who think exactly like them? You know what I mean? That's not the fucking world I want to live in. That's tribal. That's tribalism. Like we've
100%.
We've got plenty of that shit right now. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So that's why it looks to someone like you, who's a reasonable person from the outside, like a mom and pop organization, even though it is very large. I mean, I think there's 530 employees right now.
Yeah.
And by the end of the year, I would say probably more like 700, right? So it's a massive, massive company. And the amount of charity work that they continue to do and the culture and stuff like that, people are gonna. That's how it is, though. They're the largest market share in the world for direct to consumer coffee sales. So,
which is amazing.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Amazing.
So,
amazing.
Yeah, obviously, it's like anything else. If you're number one, people are going to try to come after you. I just think it's silly and it's self-destructive. Why, if people spend as much time,
but Dan, but that's every industry, that's every podcast, that's everything. There's always going to be, and you know that more than anything, there's always going to be haters, always going to be jealousy. There's always going to be, and nothing will ever change. This will be from the test of time, right? It's always going to be like that. No matter what you do. My father just passed away recently, and he's my dad was always, and it was, and I was very fortunate. Like you said, you had a tough growing up with your dad, and I don't know is your dad still around?
Yeah, but I don't really. We don't speak, so yeah. I'm fine with it. I was
the 44-year-old Dan that would talk to my dad 2-3 times a day. I would call my dad to say goodnight every night, and he just recently passed away with a sudden heart attack. It was unexpected, so it was hard. But my dad would always say, it was like, in this world, you have to be you always have to keep your eyes open. For every one person doing good, there's going to be 4 trying to bring you down, and it's just the way it is, right? And you hope that would change and people would have more of an open heart, but it's just the way the fucking world turns, right?
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but it is what it is.
Your podcast, when did you? Okay, Drunken Broken podcast. I mean, Bros podcast. Drinking Bros podcast. Yeah. So it started off with, like I said, marketing. When did it actually come to fruition to actually do your first podcast, your show? When was your first episode aired?
Well, my first one. So the guys started it. I was still working for the federal government. I was friends with these dudes, but I was still like, you can't, when you work in intelligence for the federal government, you can't exactly be on a weekly show talking all kinds of crazy shit. You know what I mean? For especially these days, I probably would have been okay back in the day when it first started because nobody really paid attention to that shit. But now for sure, I would be fired immediately. Yeah. But yeah, I started doing shows in the early to middle part of 2017. And then later that year became a permanent cast member, particularly on the sports show, because Ross, my co-host now, and I go to a lot of sports events. We go to the Super Bowl, we go to everything. And, now we've got couple of athletes on the network. Chuck Liddell, obviously from UFC, is one of them. And we travel to a lot of these events. We have a thing tomorrow night. We're covering the bare knuckle fighting championship tomorrow night. So, we got a lot of cool stuff going on. But yeah, I started back then, and then we kind of expanded it once. One of the things I was doing at Black Rifle was buying radio and podcast advertising, right, for the company. So I knew how everything worked, how the agencies worked, what the pricing models looked like. And then I looked at the audience size for that we had built for Drinkin Bros. I'm like, this can make a considerable amount of money completely separate from Black Rifle. And as things started to get serious and trying to appeal to a wider audience. And when I say wider audience, I don't mean like necessarily politically diverse, but not everybody wants to hear weird ass locker room talk from the people they're buying their coffee from. You know what I mean? So I say what you want to about that, but I think it's a reasonable thing to do. So we took the show and they continued doing the coffee thing, and they're complementary, but they don't intersect in any kind of business way at all. Right. And now the shows it's interesting to see how much money you can make. But it's not surprising. It's just eyeballs, right? That's all marketing's ever been.
So just give the audience a breakdown of how many different sections you guys have. You have your sports section, your thing. How many different breakdown? How many shows do you guys air a week, 2 weeks? Like, just give an understanding of everything.
Ooh, let's see.
There's a lot of layers there. You're not just a podcast. I know you say podcast, but you're essentially a whole media company at this point.
Yeah, we have a media network. So we we have a show called let's see, Drinkin Bros is the flagship show.
Yeah.
And we put out,
and just to know how I first found you is we've recorded 140 something episodes since last April. And one of my first guests I just reached out to and got on and we hit it off was Ray Cash Care. And then he was like, I'm going to be on Drinkin Bros next week. And he was telling me about it. Then that's when I started following you guys and checking you guys out. So he was the one who introduced me to you guys.
Yeah. I just talked to Ray yesterday. Actually, he is a lunatic, that guy. Actually, we'll have him on our network at some point. We just haven't figured out all the details yet. But as of right now, we have Drinkin Bros is the flagship show. It goes 4 times a week. Then we have Drinkin Bros Sports. And on sports, we cover whatever's in season, baseball, whatever. And then we have a gambling section as well. We have a couple of degenerates that like to gamble on golf and things like that. So it's really fun, actually. Our guy, Delco Dan over there, is actually pretty good at betting on golf, which is weird because you don't see that very frequently.
No, I don't even hear about that.
No, but I'm actually really good at betting on baseball, which a lot of people are not good at.
See, those are two sports. A lot like baseball is just yeah. Okay, go. Yeah, I would never bet on. It's very tough. There's so much unpredictables, right?
Yeah. But I mean, it is and it isn't. I guess it depends on how much attention you pay. Because I won my first 13 bets of the playoffs last year in baseball, and it's a lot of that is luck, but that's what betting is, right? It's like it's an educated guess, hopefully, unless you're just throwing your money away. But anyways, we've got the 4 sports shows. Then I have American Party with Dakota Meyer, Medal of Honor recipient. We go twice a week. That show is about. It's mostly about rejecting the idea of binary politics, right? Like you have to be right or left. I feel like we spent so much time arguing over right and left. We've lost focus of what's right and what's wrong.
I love that. I love that. No, 100%. And that goes everywhere. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I love that.
And then Ross and his wife have a show called Ross Patterson Revolution, where they talk about pop culture and stuff like that. It's a comedy show with a husband and wife. I guess kind of similar to Tom Segura and his wife. And they go twice a week. We've got 2 separate history shows. One's called Softcore History, and they like do a deep dive into like a kind of a funny but informational deep dive into certain moments in history. I think they did a show on the origins of lesbianism or some shit. But they hit all over the place. And then there's another history show called Iconoblast, and they do they each go once a week. They do something similar, I guess. I mean, it's a deep dive on historical stuff, but it's more about like people throughout history, like Julius Caesar or somebody like that, right? They'll go through that person's entire life, bookending it with context from the culture of that time and stuff. That's really interesting. Then obviously we have Icebreakers with Chuck Liddell and comedian Adam Ray. Man, I know I'm missing something.
So that's, if I'm counting that right, that's 7 right there. So what's a long-term play here? Is this like a network you guys are trying to build? Is that your long-term play?
Yeah, we're bringing a new show on here in the next week or 2 called Pardon My American. They're more conservative guys from Portland. They do a conservative show, but they're really funny, and they're this detailed analysis of like news-based pop culture. Whatever's in the news that day, they just talk about it. It's super funny. But yeah, that's the goal, is to get we want to make it kind of a big tent. I don't like the idea of, let me be frank about this. If we just went as far right or far left as possible, we would make 10 times more money than what we make right now, because that's what sells. It's clickbait bullshit. And I'm not really interested in doing that. I don't care. For me, it's not about the money. I can make money doing anything. I can start a business and make money.
Yeah.
But it is, I think it's irresponsible.
I just love the variety you're offering, right? You're going from history to sports to comedian to husband and wife. There's so much variety there, right? For the listener. So you're in the way you're growing with that, which I had no fucking clue at all what you guys are doing like that. I thought you guys were just like two really popular podcasts. I had no idea there's networking and essentially like everything you guys are building there. There's so much growth there. There's so much potential. Like literally, when I talk about a network, I'm looking at like, okay, like what's your end goal? Is it Oprah network? Like, is it a network where just you have a shitload of shows under your belt kind of thing?
Yeah, for sure. That's part of it. I mean, I think you're talking about a logistics goal versus, and I would frame it as more of a I don't know, a cultural goal maybe. I'm trying to create a media company where people can come say whatever the fuck they want and not get canceled for it. Like I don't have to agree with you for you to have the right to exist in the public discourse. That's an asinine expectation from anybody. It's also the foundation of authoritarianism and fascism. I'm not into that.
Yeah.
When in human history has the side intent on silencing the other side and removing words from language and telling people what they can and can't say ever been right? That's never been the case, not once in human history, right? So it's not about right versus left. It's about the ability to do what's right and have what I call a high volume meritocracy, which is a true meritocracy where the best idea wins, and then put as much data through that bitch as possible, right? And find out what the actual solutions. And that's why we started the American Party, because that's what the shit is all about, right? That's the whole purpose of all of this.
So you're actually on, if I got this right, three of the shows, or four?
3, but I do guest spots on some of the other ones.
So how many times, like, okay, so you guys, is everything done in individual studios? Is it all done in one studio? Like, how does this all work logistically?
Most stuff is done out of our studio here in Austin. We have 7 different sets there. The Pardon My American guys have their own stuff in Oregon, obviously, right now, but I think they might be looking to move down here, but probably the DFW area, Dallas, not here. But yeah, we have a couple of off-site, but the vast majority of our content gets created in our studio here in Austin.
I love it.
Yeah. I love it. And it's a good, we got a good setup there. And I do, let's see, 4, 5, 6. I probably do like 10 or 12 shows a week, something like that. So, you know, I would say on average, it's probably 10 shows, and the shows are about 90 minutes each. So it's a lot. And then, you know, for what people don't understand is for every hour you spend on camera, there's 2 or 3 hours behind the scenes where you're actually, you know, researching and all this other shit. Plus we're running the company. You know, we finally started to hire people. We're in the process of hiring a CFO now. We've got our production team pretty much put together. I think we're going to hire some marketing folks next to start to expand our audience and you know, get more hits on merchandise and stuff like this.
Yeah, I was going to say like, the merchandise is something to jump all over. I love
right.
That.
Well, I mean, for me, it's less. We don't really care if we make money off the merch. It's just a billboard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I want people who see all this madness about defunding police to realize that politicians are all a bunch of shitbags, right?
I love it.
And they're the people that need to go away, not first responders. So
no, I'm 1,000,000,000% behind you. I mean, my 2 closest buddies, I actually took police sciences in college, and I never finished it. But my 2 closest buddies, my best man at my wedding is a detective. I'm around police officers all the time, and it's like, it's hard to see that these guys don't even want to work on the fucking road. They rather be behind a desk now than be on the road because they're fucking the shit they have to deal with all the time, right? Yeah,
it's nonsense. And you're seeing mass exoduses from departments in big cities here in the US right now. And it's a big problem, right? I mean, crime is up like hundreds of % all over the place. It's a silly proposition.
Do you see any change in that?
You know, you're starting to.
And what has to happen to change? I know you're going to say the district attorney.
Yeah, the district attorney of LA, Gascon. He is an idiot, by the way.
Yeah,
has done all this stupid shit, and now I think something like one of the stupid things they've done is if you can even somewhat demonstrate that you can't afford bail, you don't get arrested for anything anymore. right? So burglary, if it's under $1,000, burglary is a felony, by the way. Burglary is not robbery. It's so burglary is where you go through an enclosure, right? You bust out the window of their house, or their car, or something. Then you steal shit. As long as the theft is under $1,000, you don't get. And you guys have had that law in Canada for a while, actually. Theft under 1,000.
Yeah.
It never works. And now all these, this
has been like this for a while. Because I mean, I have buddies that used to do before they became officers, they were doing the whole the loss prevention, and you catch anybody, the cops are just slap you in the hand. Okay, here's a little, have a nice day, and that's it. Anything under 1,000, right?
Now something like, I don't know how many it was total, but 17 cities in LA County have taken votes of no confidence in this guy, right? And they're going to try to initiate a recall. Obviously, the governor of California is facing a recall right now. So I think that's the solution. Like a well-informed population is the solution to everything. It always is. But people have to want to be well-informed, and there has to be an apparatus by which they can be well-informed. And that's kind of where independent media comes in, right?
Okay. I was about to say that. Yeah. 100%. Because the media is, I mean, we're going through in Canada here, Dan, and I don't know if you know how it is, but I mean, we're not even 100% out of lockdown yet. We're just in stage 3. Like we were having in Ontario, which is massive province, like a state to you guys, and where Toronto, Canada is and everything, and where we live. I mean, we, as of like 3 weeks ago, we were in still full lockdown with like 1,000 cases a day, and we're on lockdown with, I mean, it was insane what they were doing here. Insane. We had, as an entrepreneur, 13,000 mama papa restaurants have all locked their doors in the last 14, 15 months, which is fucking crazy.
I mean, that is crazy, but I would say, I don't know about restaurants specifically, but about 600,000 businesses in the US have closed permanently. Yeah. A lot more have been closed over the last year and a half or so, but at least 500,000 have been closed permanently now. And here's the problem. Here, the downstream effect of that, people will say, they'll make arguments about X, Y, and Z. Well, we had to protect ourselves, whatever the fuck, right? That's obviously nonsense. But the real problem is this. There are certain companies that have the ability to spend their way out of this kind of situation. Amazon is one of them, obviously. I mean, Bezos got taken to the cleaners for $70 billion, and he's now he's back to being the richest man on earth again within a year and a half, right?
Yeah.
Just from the money he's made.
And I would say COVID had a huge part of that. Everybody being home, fucking where was everybody ordering? Amazon, right? Yeah,
for sure. So what happens is, and we're going to see more of this, by the way. This isn't over yet. What happens is, the small mom and pop owned businesses aren't able to stay in business. So more of their business and their employees get gobbled up by these conglomerates and these large corporations. Now, I don't have a problem with large corporations in general, but there does have to be a balance between big and small. I mean, if you're a student of history, you would understand that just from the way that the United States wrote its Constitution. The 9th and 10th Amendments were specifically written to give power back to the people and then to the states, right? That wasn't explicitly enumerated in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. They made it a very clear point to say anything not covered here goes back to you guys, and it's called upward control in classical liberalism. Upward control means you control things. The power is rooted at the lowest possible level for every single decision, because that's where people are affected most by that decision.
Yeah, 100%.
You know what I mean? So upward control has to be a principle of all this stuff. And when you take power out of the hands of people and now they're forced to work for companies like Amazon, who doesn't give them back bathroom breaks and shit. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous. That's what happens when you have mass corporatism. As a matter of fact, one of the better sci-fi TV series that I've seen in the last 10 years it was shot in Canada, actually. It's called Continuum. And it's about this. It's about runaway corporatism. Like there was something called the corporate Congress at that point, because corporations were so large and powerful that they started setting the laws.
Yeah.
And I got to be honest, the way that Facebook and Google and a variety of these other companies are controlling information and commerce right now, it doesn't seem like it's that far apart. We watch these things like there's some kind of mythical dystopian nightmare, but in reality, it's just a slow creep of corporatism, the same way we see slow creeps of socialism, right?
Yeah.
Like you have assholes on both sides of this aisle, and all they're trying to do is get richer and more powerful. And that's why upper control is so important. People at the bottom, right? Controlling as much as possible.
Yeah. And it's a domino effect too, right? I mean, people just look at a small business, but that small business, now they're affecting, like, I'll give you an example, like we do with 1,800 gyms, 500 in Ontario alone weren't ordering off us. So now that affects us. So what happens? I buy raw material. That affects the raw material guy, affects our factories. It's just chain ball effect, right? Just domino effect, that how many people it is affecting, all this shit, right? So yeah, insane, buddy. Insane.
Yeah, it's wild. And it's it's a runaway effect. I mean, look, we know when commerce gets isolated into small pockets of very rich and powerful people, and then you have in a parallel environment, politics where it takes $2 to $6 million for a congressperson to get elected, right?
It's crazy.
Then how do you not expect that that's what's going to happen? People that need money are going to talk to people that have money, and the people that have money now are able to control votes in Congress, man. It's an untenable situation, and it only leads in one direction. And it's not a direction that I think these people are either aware of or prepared for, which is there's going to be some kind of conflict at some point, right? Yeah. And hopefully it just stays civil. That's my hope.
Do you see that in the very near future? It's trending there, right?
It's hard to say, man. There's so many people that are completely brainwashed right now. More so, I mean, I feel like I'm living in the dark ages.
Is that because of mainstream media? Everybody's just glued to their fucking TV, especially the last 14 months being home?
Certainly that's part of it. I also think that there's an element of fear involved where people don't. So every single one of us at some point in our lives, and this is embarrassing to admit, but every single one of us has watched somebody fall or drop something or trip, and we could have helped them, and we ignored it because we didn't want the responsibility of having to help them, right? Every single one of us has done that. Now, a lot of people, myself included, train ourselves to like react quickly and help other people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But that's something you train yourself to do. I think human instinct is to mind your own business for the most part. And I think the psychological aspect of that is that whenever, and it's almost the inverse of the IKEA effect. The IKEA effect says in commerce, if you give somebody a product that's 80% complete, and then they do the other 20%, they're more invested in the value of that product and more likely to buy it. And that's a real psychological phenomenon, right? Yeah, it's called the IKEA effect. It's real. Excuse me. And I think the inverse of that is
I've never heard that before, but it's totally like, yeah, fucking totally makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And the inverse of that is the bystander effect, right? The more people who are around, the less likely anybody is to help. And I think we're all sitting here staring at this really fucked up situation, and not a whole lot of people. Like, if you say out loud what's wrong, then you're taking some responsibility for fixing it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I don't think people want to do that. So it's easier to be an ostrich and bury your head in the sand right now. Well, I'm telling you, that shit's coming, whether you see it coming or not. And you damn sure better be ready to fight it off.
Fuck, I love everything you're doing, buddy. I mean, you're on the fucking ball with everything, like everything. And the more you are able to spread your word and get in front of many people as possible, I mean, you're obviously a light in the end of the tunnel that hopefully get people to realize what the fuck is happening. So I love everything you're doing, brother.
I hope so. I mean, look, we try to go on as many shows as possible and do as much stuff as possible and talk to as many influential business people. I mean, we had
you just have a way. You just have a way. You know, one thing. Sorry about that, Dan.
No, go ahead.
One thing about you is, and I love that is, I've listened to a couple of your shows and stuff like that. Obviously, there's some are controversial, some are upfront. Some people are going to question, but there is an educational side of everything you say. Everything you say, there's a thought process. There's a calmness to the way you speak and the way you talk about stuff that you're making it very. The easiest way to say very understandable. Like, I'm here listening to you, and as a Canadian coming across the board, looking at you and listening to everything you're saying, I'm just like, this guy fucking knows it. Like, he's on the ball with this shit. So I appreciate that. And I think a lot more people need to hear that. And I think that's so important for you to get on as much shows as possible, the bigger variety. Like our audience is like, we do well with our podcast. We get a shitload of downloads, but it's very Canadian based. So it's great to have somebody like yourself on here just to add some realistic mindset to all this, right?
I think so. I mean, it's good to hear from different people. And to your point about, look, you don't want to sound too professorial because it seems like you're looking down your nose at people and judging. Like it's in America, we have this phrase, rules for thee, but not for me. Right. It's kind of how Congress, for example, doesn't have to use the same healthcare system we do or the same retirement systems we do. They have their own stuff. Right.
Yeah.
So the idea, like this country was founded specifically to avoid aristocracy, and aristocracy happened pretty much immediately.
Yeah.
A lot of quote unquote patriots don't want to admit that, but our country has been fucked up for a long time. But I think that I think the benefit of just talking out loud about why you think what you think is the equivalent of showing your work on a math problem. So the professor can come over and see like, oh, here's where you fucked up. Right.
Yeah.
And then you can correct yourself. And I think in this case, the professor is the public discourse is provided it's honest and there's all the information out there. Then you should be able to track your thoughts back. Like, I think this, and this, and here's why. And then somebody's like, well, on point A, this piece of data is actually wrong. And maybe that affects point C or doesn't, right? But if it might affect point D or E or so on. And if you don't have all the information, you can't make an educated decision. So
that goes with everything, right?
Yeah. That's why I don't want to be in a vacuum of people who only think like me.
Yeah. I love
it.
That.
It just doesn't make sense.
Have you written a book yet?
I'm working on a few right now. Yeah.
Okay.
One of them is, excuse me. One of them is for one of the shows, the American Party. And it's basically just, it's kind of a list of principles. So the premise of, at least from my perspective, Dakota could probably speak more from his, although I think he's aligned with me on this, that the principle of the American Party is principles over people. Like, I'm not going to get involved in Trump versus Biden because I don't give a shit about either one of those guys. What I care about is what's right and what's wrong and what's working and what isn't working. That's what I care about. So, I mean, it reminds me of the old Ford Chevy debates. Like, one of them is better for something and one of them is better for something. That is an objective empirical fact.
Yeah.
And we can find that out if we just divorce ourselves from the romantic idea that one of them is better than the other intrinsically, because that doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah.
So, excuse me, the book I'm writing right now, The American Party, goes over the principles that I think are the most important principles that we could draw from the founders of the country, the Constitution, from John Locke, from all these people that have written about republicanism and classical liberalism and all this stuff over the years. And, the interesting part about being able to do it this way and having the show is I can get feedback. So I can put this stuff out into the universe.
Yeah.
And
I love that.
My listeners can come back at me and look, we have a very diverse group of listeners. We have truck drivers and people in the military. We have physicists. Dr. Brian Keating is a great friend of mine. He's been listening to the show forever. They'll call me directly or DM me or whatever and see like, hey, what you said makes sense, or here's why I think what you said almost made sense, or what you said made no sense, right? And it's good to get that feedback.
That's how you grow, right? Being challenged. That's
right.
The only way we grow. So I love that.
Yeah, I like that. All these fucking tough guy patriot people that are always on these purity tests and all this stuff, talking about iron sharpens iron. Dude, sitting around in a room just talking shit with people who think exactly like you, that's not iron. That's not sharpening anything. You're just being an asshole, to be honest.
I love it.
But I'm super excited about this book.
When do you plan to, what's your goal to get it out by?
I'd like to have it, the principle done and start doing edits and stuff by October.
And that's you said this is your first time writing a book?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. I started last year. I did a book back there. It's called Entrepreneurial Dad. And it became #1 in 11 categories Amazon. And that was just, it's the same thing, pen to paper and I just went at it. And I'm actually writing, I'm in the process right now writing a 6-series children's book in memory of my dad, and all the money will go to charity to Sick Kids Hospital, which my son has been very heavily involved with Sick Kids Hospital. And it's called Grandpa Joe's Adventures. And they're just lessons. The first one's called Strawberry Hill, a lesson on gratitude. And they're just 6 lessons for children. So I'm doing that for charity too now. But it's fun. Awesome. It just takes your creative side and lets you put it on paper. And I love how you're getting the feedback through it all, because that's a huge aspect of it too, right? So I love that. One last question for you, brother. Mm-hmm. If something were to happen to you today, in a couple words, how would you want to be remembered, described by your loved ones or your closest friends?
How I would want to be remembered.
Living eulogy.
To be honest, that's kind of one of the premises of the book. So one of the principles in the American Party is says, I will live a life worth dying for, right? Because that's the expectation in a free society. I was talking to some people about this the other day about the whole hard times make hard men make soft times make soft men, etc. Right? I've yet to find any kind of way to communicate sacrifice and the effects of it to people who haven't actually done it themselves. Yeah. You'll find the rare bird who's able to contextualize and appreciate that stuff in a real way without having experienced it, but I would say that's pretty rare. So one of the things I talk about is service to other people, right? So if indeed there's a life and an appreciation to be known only on the other side of sacrifice, I think sacrifice has to be intrinsically linked to our parenting and education in this country. So my idea is something like starting in 5th grade, to pass each grade, you have to do some kind of civil service each year, like volunteer in a fucking retirement home, or pick up garbage on the side of the highway, or go into a neighborhood that doesn't look like yours, right? And help people that need help, stuff like that. See what real abject poverty looks like before you start running around talking about how you're living in a fascist country. You know what I mean? Things like that. That's what I want to be known for. I want to be known as a person who
positive change. Yeah.
Someone who challenged other people and also made sure that I personally met that challenge as well. You know what I mean? We have a lot of problems in this country. We have a heavy burden to lift, but we're also stronger together. Yeah. And I think that we're playing tug of war with each other instead of against actual issues. Like the enemy shouldn't be the right or the left. The enemy should be poverty. Right. I love that. War to me is the enemy, not Iraq, not Afghanistan. War itself is the enemy. That's what we should be fighting against. And that's not to say I'm a pacifist. There's a peace that's only known on the other side of war, right? We know that. Yeah. But I just think that one of the other principles that I really like is I will not allow those less fortunate or incapable of defending themselves to be harmed or taken advantage of in my country. And the brief version of that is patriots say we, not me, right? Yeah. Like if you really love your country, then you love everybody. Then you take care of it, right? Yeah. It doesn't matter where someone came from or what language they speak or what their parents did or any of that shit. Yeah. Right. It just doesn't make any sense. So I want to unite people under not under some bullshit. You know what I mean? Not under like, oh, fucking some catchy quip or some, political jargon nonsense. I want to unite people under rational thought. Like, hey, we're all fucked here if we don't work together. Yeah. So, get your shit together and make it happen.
I appreciate that, man. This has been a pleasure, man. This has been, man, I respect you at a different level right now, man. I love everything you're saying. I love how you put so much thought into everything you say. So, man, keep killing it, man. I appreciate you. Where could our audience get a hold of you? Where could our audience check out your podcast and all that stuff like that?
Right. Well, you can find any of our shows on YouTube. It's Drinkin Bros Podcast on YouTube. We also have, oh God, how did I forget that one? We got a new show with Mike the Cop and Eric Tanzi, 2 former police officers, called Failure to Stop. And they talk about whatever issues are going on in policing at the time. They're both retired cops, so they can say whatever the hell they want. They're not bound by their departments anymore. But that's on Mike the Cop's YouTube channel, but all the other ones you can find on Drinkin Bros YouTube channel. You can find all of our podcasts anywhere you can find podcasts, wherever, Apple or Spotify or anywhere like that. And then obviously Instagram, Drinkin Bros Podcast, American Party Podcast. My name is Dan Hollaway.
This is awesome, brother. Thank you so much, man.
Absolutely, dude. Thanks for having me.
That's a wrap for today. I want to thank our guest, Dan, for being such an incredible guest today. Such an incredible conversation. If you guys enjoy this podcast as much as I have, like all weeks, tell your friends, tell your family, spread the word. We love listening to and reading your reviews. So leave us 5 stars. That would be absolutely amazing. Until next week, guys, keep moving forward.